Hey guys, this is Crap Hunter, and welcome to another episode of World of Tanks. Yeah, we've been doing quite a bit of World of Tanking at the moment. If you guys have joined me from GDTV, thank you very much for joining. Well, if you're a fan of World of Tanks, then I'm going to do what I can to keep you guys entertained. In this video, we're going to be having a little look at the M3 Lee. Now, the M3 Lee is a famous tank, for unfortunate reasons. In the earlier versions of World of Tanks, this was classed as the worst tank in World of Tanks. However, thankfully, as the patches have gone on and more and more nations have been released, like them, the classing of bad tanks, the amount of bad tanks has been raised to a certain degree. Now we've got more frustrating tanks, we've got shocking tanks, and there are tanks out there that are just completely frightening and terrifyingly bad. So, like I was saying, in a sense, what this video is about is it's trying to basically tell you how that this thing is an effective tank if you use it correctly. Now, let's have a look at some of the stats. Now, the M3 Lee medium tank has 310 hit points. Now, for most of you who have been going through, if you are an experienced World of Tanks player, some of you will no doubt know that when you go through a tank, you upgrade the turret, you get a better turret, or you get more health, better armor. With the Lee, you don't get the upgraded turret, so this is the only thing that you will have, and that I think is that on the top. This turret here is the only upgrade, and unfortunately it's not the gun that you use. Well, thankfully it's not the gun you use, because that's the gun you use, and this is just a pain in the ass. Unfortunately, this is going to be your greatest weakness, but we'll talk about weaknesses and the downsides later on. It weighs just over 28 tons, obviously allowing for whatever kind of equipment you want, but still. So it weighs over just 28 tons. It's not a light tank. It's definitely not a light tank. However, it does make up for its heaviness with some decent engine power, 440 with the top engine, and it is kind of good. Well, it is good because much better than that one. Although it's only 40 horsepower more, it does make the difference. Now, unfortunately, I'm not a massive speedy kind of mathematician, so I can't tell you what kind of torque this thing has for weight ratio. Yeah, I don't know. All I know is that it does get up to its 38 kph speed limit relatively quickly. This is not a slow tank. It's not like a Churchill or an AMX for sure. It definitely has the pace to be about medium-sizedly going into fighting. Traverse speed, obviously because this thing doesn't have a turret, is incredibly good. Allows you can spin quite well in combat and react to certain situations relatively quickly, which is thumbs up on this one. Its view range is 320. Now this is good in a couple of respects, but not so good in a few others, because unfortunately you don't really have the ability to upgrade, because once again you don't have the ability to have the turret. But if we compare it to, say, our Russian counterparts, this is for example, the T-28 medium tank. Its view range is 320 already. However, unfortunately, it can upgrade its turret to 340, so 20 degrees more. For, I think, the American counterparts? No American counterparts. For Germany, you've got the Panzer III, 330 off the beat. And you've also got the ability to upgrade it, which means it'll have the same view range, which is quite high, just better armor. So that beats you. And because, you know, they are here, I'll explain the reason why I'm in this in another video. 320. So view range wise, this thing doesn't have the best view range, in all honesty, but you know, we'll go with it. I'm still currently grinding, and now I'm not exactly 100% experienced in whether this works or not, but this thing can get a tier 9 radio, so it can go up to 615 meters worth of range. Now that's good, That's very good. In fact, on the previous tank, if we look at the M2 medium, you can gain the same radio. Though, to be honest, the likelihood of you reaching that radio in this thing will mean lots and lots of very stressful games. So the more sensible choice is to ignore the M2 medium, grind through it as fast as possible, grab the Lee, then go for the radio. But yeah, so this thing can get up to 615. So in a sense, you do have an advantage because, if I'm not mistaken, let's go back to our T28 compatriot. You only get the tier 5 radio, which only goes up to 360. Now, I'm not exactly sure whether this means anything major, but I think the only tanks that can ever kind of duke it out challenging with you is this, which basically has the same kind of range as other things. Germany, of course, you know, because it's awesome, gets the FUG 12, which means that literally nearly every one of the German tanks has the best radio. So Germany beats everyone, almost everyone, in radio terms. So you do gain an advantage with the radio, which is quite good because this thing does, I think, okay, let's go on to the weaknesses before we go into what strategies. The hull armor. Now this is kind of where it can start to not be so fine. 51 at the front. Now this is sloped, but most vehicles have the weapons by tier 4 at least to easily overpower most forms of lower armor. And unfortunately it's 38 the sides and 38 the rear. And unfortunately this thing has a big side to it. You know, so you have to be careful in combat. And don't forget as well, speaking of weaknesses, you've got your turret, because this is where your gun is. So the best kind of circumstances for you to use this tank is if you can find a cover which blocks up at least that much. If you can imagine me drawing an imaginary line, it blocks up that much of your tank. So that way your gun can still be used, but it hides all of your weaknesses. The transmission can be shot through here, like German tanks, the famous through the bottom of Lower Glacius. You can get your, although it doesn't look like it, you can still end up getting your transmission and engine shot out. Oops, wrong one. Obviously the track's quite a big target. Generally, I'm going to call this the barn door side syndrome. You can't really, if you're in combat, you must not avoid turning at all costs unless the situation requires you to do so. If you're facing enemy forces from the front, do not get afraid and start to turn around, because for example, first of all, your gun won't be able to fire, and second of all, your armor on the 38th side is it's a folly idea, which is why in strategy terms we'll come up to in a few minutes. But yeah, this thing, it's not a very, it can dish it out at points, but it won't be able to take too much. Luckily you've got the 310 hit points, but you know. But that said, it's not as bad armor-wise as some Russian vehicles. The T28 has only 30 on the front, 20 on the sides, 20 on the rear, and the turret armor isn't that much better either. It may have 320 hit points, but once you upgrade that, it's no better armor-wise, and the T28 feels like you're just driving a big wooden shed. So, and let's have a look at the A20, because that's always at the top tier. Once again, 20 hull armor. For Germany, let's have a look at Germany. The Panzer III. Yeah, 70 on the front, but 30 on the sides, and for some reason the rear of this tank is more heavily armoured than the sides. No idea why. But of course, as always, the French do somehow have their own advantages, not a very big one. Their armour is 70 on the front, 65 on the sides, and 40 on the rear. And I'll go into the AMX-40 when I have the will to commit suicide. But anyway, so this thing it's basically the middle ground when it comes to fighting, when it comes to sort of taking damage and dishing it out. And speaking of dishing it out, let's have a look at the guns. Now, the two guns that you are given, and there is the disadvantage there. You're only given two guns. This is your gun selection. The first one is a pile of crap, and the second one is a pile of crap only on a silver plate. The first gun you get, and I'll just close that so that way you can focus entirely on this, is the 75 M2. It's 75 caliber, has quite a fast rate of fire. So they do have they have a little bit of the British loads of rounds a minute style. Um, Only 90 pen though. So for a new World of Tanks player, because by this point you're still not considering putting money into this. You're not really being rewarded very much for this kind of tank. But it does compensate you with 110 damage when you do hit, and a very good aiming time. Regretfully, regretfully quite inaccurate. It's not a very good gun at all, in all fairness. But bearing in mind this is tier 4, most vehicles and guns and tanks are not as good, except for Germany. And that's not a bias. It's just because German tanks by this point were advanced. The Panzer II, okay, Panzer III may not be the primest of examples, but let's have a look. See, yeah, so that's 3904. Maybe not as much penetration, maybe not as much damage, but at least you can fire more rounds. It's 50 cal. So, you know, tier 4 weapons, they're not good. They're not like the best, if you will, but they're getting there. So, you know, this gun, not very good, but its aiming time is good, and its ability to dish out rounds is quite impressive. Damage as well, pretty darn good. Don't forget, at tier 4, you're pretty much zapping half someone's health. And if you're in very good tierage, you can pretty much kill someone with one shot some days. Then, once you've upgraded the tracks and the gun, because it's one of those cases where it's not just tracks, turret and gun, it's just tracks and gun, you get the L-37. This is the famous tank. This is the famous cannon that you see on the American M4 Sherman. This is like the classic Sherman. So this is an upgraded version of the same gun. It has an increased firing rate, which is quite nice. 2 more millimeters worth of penetration, but believe you me, in tier 4 matches, it makes the difference. And has the same amount of damage, but has better accuracy. You are compensating, though, with the fact that it doesn't have as much of a... It has a longer aiming time, but in comparison to faster firing rate, more penetration, better accuracy, you are looking at a... well, you're looking at a much better... You are looking at a much better gun. So, with all that said, of all the tactics, you know, what are the tactics? What would be the recommended thing to do? Well, first off, what you want to do with this thing is you don't want to go close combat. This thing cannot even survive. This thing wouldn't survive for 3 seconds in close quarters combat. This thing cannot duke it out close up. Unless it's low tier vehicles like a tier 3 or a tier 2, you will very much struggle against anything above tier 3 or which has a better gun than you. In short, this thing cannot do close quarters combat. No, what this thing is a TD. Now for some people out there, it's, you know, it might have been bloody obvious. But for some people, and I believe you me, you will be surprised at how dumb some people can be in this game. They may not even realise this. Some people don't like TDs. Myself, I love them. This thing has done me great service. And here's a funny little aspect. If you have played the Hetzer, you'll no doubt have noticed a similarity in the design for the Hetzer and the M3 Lee. Now, I'm not saying back in World War II the Americans had actually thought about this and thought, actually, we'll build a tank that looks a bit like the Hetzer. But in this game, you'll no doubt notice that the similarities in the Tier 4 Hetzer and the Lee allows you to be able to work with a tank which doesn't have a straightforward gun like the Sturg or the ELC. I will go into that later. Or in most other forms of tanks. So, because I have been playing in the Hetzer, I have been able to figure out the kind of tactics required for me to be able to do well. And, because I have experience in the Hetzer, I applied the same tactics to my M3 Lee and found quite impressive results. So, the general recommendation for this tank, tactic-wise, is for you to just take it back. Because you're a medium tank, there might be this impetus for you to get into the fray. You've just come from the M2 medium tank, and you're like, yeah, I'm in an M3 Lee. I've got 310 hit points. I'm going to go in there and... What the hell? I died with one shot? It's because you were doing it wrong. What you should have done is you should have appraised the situation and realized everyone can kill you very much easier in this thing. That's what I say when this thing can't really take too much of the word punishment. It can dish it out quite effectively, but you've got to remember the TD tactics unless you want to be a charring wreck and someone's barbecue stand. So, with all that said... Oh, no, sorry, I almost forgot. Crew and equipment. Now, if you're the kind of person who likes this tank a lot and wants to keep it in their collection for whatever reasons, either you want to say I conquered the world in my Lee, or you want to make it look kind of... You want to kind of make it your own. The equipment I would recommend, and for new players this is kind of an important thing, is you want automatically a medium tank gun rammer. Now what this does is, for those of you who don't know, is it may not look, the minus 10% to loading time may not look all that impressive, but what it does do is it increases your crew's capabilities to reload shells faster. And in a 75mm, which can fire 20 rounds, you're looking to fire 21 rounds a minute. So a medium tank gun rammer is an essential requirement. You just need this thing. It's an absolute essential. For the second, I would automatically recommend improved ventilation in Class 2. This means that 5% to all crew skills. So that means your commander will be doing good, your gunner will be doing good, your radio man, your driver, your loader. It will all be that a little bit better and that much better, which means that when you get these guys to 100%, they won't be just 100%, they'll be 105%. And in this game, any percentage matters. As always, the third option is your own. You either want to have it camouflage, so that way you don't have to worry about being spotted. You may want to have binocular telescope, so that way when you are sitting down waiting for your opponents to come to you, or you're using it as it should have been, as a TD, you can use that turret, you could say, as an example, to make it you have a binocular telescope. You may want to have coated optics, in case, which although doesn't increase it as much as you'd want it to, it still does, it still can improve. Or you may want to have an enhanced gun laying drive to be able to make you aim down the sight, to be able to get your aim much better and much faster. But apart from that, I mean, crew skills wise, obviously for commander, I'm not to be honest, I'm not too experienced in telling what crew skills work for which. I'm still learning about the crew skills, but what I can tell you is a recommended thing is either reconnaissance to be able to make your commander see more, or sixth sense. And they say to get sixth sense more. So if you guys are more experienced in perks and skills than I am, feel free to let me know which is the better. I've been going with recon because the more view range I have, the better it is. So sixth sense or recon for them. For your gunner, now this is a special tank because it has two gunners. So one could be, so I would say definitely for at least one of the guys, you put Deadeye. Now Deadeye is an immensely handy tool because what this does is it allows you to have the ability to cause more damage to a tank in critical terms. So for example, if I shot at an enemy tank and it was a normal thing, I might damage the radio man or damage the tracks or whatever. But if I had the Deadeye, it basically increases my chances of really making someone's day go horribly wrong. For this guy also, you could also get the snapshot. Snapshot really does help because what this does is that your gun rotation, basically your gunner will be able to acclimatize for the accuracy loss when your turret is rotating. Now technically speaking, you don't need to really worry about turret rotation, but with this thing, as you're moving, imagine this entire tank is your turret. So if you can react faster and have an ability to have a decent aim by the time you've turned round, it probably will be immensely handy. Just saying. But yeah, so apart from that, I would recommend everything else just have camouflage or repair, which can be, we go to the training skills one last time, you can either have repairs, which means if you get shot in the tracks and you don't have a repair kit, you can repair it a lot faster, or if you're like me, if you want to have it a bit more of a TD, you can have camouflage. So, with all that said, thank you very much for watching this section. What we're going to do now is I'm going to take you on to some of the videos or replays where I actually was quite successful in that. So, see you in game, guys. And we're back. So, this is the Fjords map, and I am in my Lee. We've also got a few. Well, actually, the enemy team has a Lee on the top tier, so it's kind of looking good. And this is kind of what you could say is the best kind of matchmaking you could get in the league. You can, I mean, this is kind of rare, unfortunately, but at the same time, you know, you can be just as effective at a lower part of the tier, but that's the other half. So anyway, as we're approaching off the map, obviously some people are heading up right towards the top end. I'm going towards the more of the middle area because, as you can see, thanks to our suicidal scout, Mr. BT7, he goes right into the front line, getting himself killed. Well done. However, this does, however, expose where the enemy team is, and I spot the top tier M3 Lee along with a Panzer 1C. God, I hate that tank. So Panzer 1C and the Lee, I think, are taking cover behind the ruins of the very stupid BT7. So I try and throw a number of shots in there because at the time I didn't think he actually was covering all of the wreckage. So I was trying to deliver a number of shots when an Su-85 pops in. I'm like, oh, hello, bang! I take a damaging 5 shot, and then I take another damaging shot, bang! I was able to finally kill off their top tier vehicle, but I then started to take fire from somewhere. Now I think it was their artillery because it's only a tier 2 and he wasn't doing too much damage, so I could afford to take a number of shots. And anyway, so as I'm coming around trying to take a shot at, then I get another shot by this artillery. Right, so as we're being approached. And right, before I go on, I'm just going to show you guys a little tactic which, for younger players and for TDs, kind of happens a fair, well, not, I wouldn't say TDs, more SPGs and or self-propelled guns if you don't know, and for newish TD players because obviously their armor isn't as good. Now you can see the M5 Stuart, which is here, right? There he is. There's the guy, and you can also see oh, you can see him on the map. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a tactic which people like him do. And it's not a bad tactic. In fact, it's a very good tactic depending on what kind of game you're in, because there are even tier 10 players who will flap about when thrown into the situation. So, the M5A1 Stuart decides to charge me. So as he comes charging in, I miss the first shot, and I'm going to slow it down. So, right, so halfway. So basically what he's doing is he's trying to scare me by shooting at me. And this basically is, I know it sounds stupid, but scare you by shooting at you. No, you think? But no, what he's trying to do is he's trying to make me flap about, like, oh, what am I doing? What am I doing? What's going on? What's going on? And basically it's making my whole tank do something stupid. Like, for example, I could reverse panicking and try to shoot wildly to try and get him off my tail. Or if, you know, if I make the ultimate mistake and show my sides or rear trying to escape, because even in games like this you can break, he could get lucky and start flanking me at this point. However, because I have a fair amount of experience behind my tank and I know exactly, and historically I know which one's the heavier one, I know which one's going to win. So, boff! I ram him, realizing he is about to die. Bang! There's another kill for me. So, you know, his tactic, although well considered, didn't work. So then I decided to come up and help out our team, because I'll just pause it again. These brave souls are currently keeping the enemy fighting off our foes, doing so much damage. It's great. Anyway, so I ambush a Panzer 38T. I deliver the killing blow, and BT7, bang! Oh dear, I set him on fire and he dies. I always love setting people on fire. And unfortunately, a mate A1 decides to take a shot, which is finally when the Combinator, who's actually a tier above me, decides to grow some man balls and goes into the fight. All that for 2 tanks. Anyway, this is where I make a bit of a mistake, because I assumed that teammates over there could take on 1 or 2 tanks. So I decided to go down into the town because there is a Panzer III. Now, the Panzer III has a kill, and he definitely knows, he seems like he knows what he's doing. So, but then I noticed that the Panzer 1C has taken damage and is being charged by a B1 and a Panzer 2G. By this point, the artillery that delivered a number of amount of damage decides to kill himself as a coward, and the the Matilda, still not being knocked out, is now starting to kick ass and take names. So, but then finally, our team decides to start shooting at him, and then it's the Panzer 1C. Yeah, it's the Panzer 1C. No, it's the M5A1. The M5A1 rams him, killing him entirely. So, although this match was a bit of a cash and grab, because if you look at the amount of kills that we've got compared to them, I mean, admittedly, sometimes, you know, admittedly, our team was pretty good. You know, their team, unfortunately, I feel sorry for the people who did try in this team. But, in a sense, this is a cash and grab. But at the same time, it does show how effective you can be. And I was actually kind of glad that there was an M3 Lee on the other side. Because in a sense, I mean, nothing distant to the player. He might be a new player, who knows. That's not how to use an M3 Lee. He was planning on using it as a slugger tank, and I used it as a TD. So you can kind of see where the tactics are for this thing. Anyhow, let me just... I'll go now to the other video, which is a hell of a lot more action-packed and a lot more cooler. So, see you then. And we're back for the other battle. Now, this is in the Pearl River, is it? Not Pearl River, is it? I cannot remember. This is the new map from patch 8.5, and I have to say, I really like this map. I really do like this map. I wasn't sure whether I was... no, I was now. Right, I wasn't sure whether I was sending a message or something. So, obviously, I haven't played this map so much, so I don't know what the recommended tactic was, but I was going to follow the plan and strategic tactic that my Lee always does, which is quite simply go to a TD spot and use this as a TD. Now, for some reason, not many people went to the slugfest zone here, which is kind of nice, I suppose. I mean, some people, I've seen matches go well for people who go up there, but at the same time, it can go wrong. So it does depend. Of course, I'm more focused on this side. I always find that this side's a little bit more dangerous than that side. I mean, yes, there is slugfest zones, but you know, at least there's something. So anyway, our team bumps into an Electo, and I start racing this Su-85B towards the target, nearly going off the cliff, as I do so definitely, and my Lee fails to beat the tank. I was like, no, damn it. So there, for some reason, he thinks that was so radical that he had to praise his god. So now I'm kind of camping. Yes, it's not, you know, the greatest of things, but this thing is not a slugfester. So now I'm starting to take shots like a TD behind cover and behind the trees. This is definitely TD zone. I love this kind of area. So there we go, nice damaging shot. And then I spot a T-28. I then just trying to turn left to see if there's any shots I can deliver into the side of it, when all of a sudden slugfest zone number 1's there, and oh, what a surprise, a tier 1 tank. So I shoot him for one shot, and I shoot him for another. Bang! High damage roll results in that tank being destroyed. And now I'm trying to focus a lot harder on this Matilda tank, because Matildas are the evil buggers in this game, or this kind of tierage. I don't really notice the map, unfortunately, until now, where I spot the T-28. Now, the T-28 is being a crafty little bugger, because he's trying to sneak. And admittedly, I start pissing out rounds at some points of this game, but it's all for the common good. So then I'm getting another good shot into the T-28, focusing completely now against the T-28. Lucky shot that hit there. Bang! Unfortunately, the Su-85B is taking fire, but lucky shot number 2 does give me some kind of credibility and victory. Now, unfortunately, we are losing the game 5-7, and the enemy team are actually doing pretty well. So this isn't exactly what I'd call a perfect scenario. The AMX-40 now finally joins the fight, which is of no surprise, and we've finally were able to knock out their higher tiered Combinator. However, they still have Electos, and those things are evil, because don't forget, the Electo does have the ability to have a 25-pounder, which can one-shot many a tank. So I decided to try to take a few more shots into the Matilda, with unfortunate failure. At this point, I was still kind of toying with the idea. Then I went to the left to try and see if I can take out multiple tanks. Now this is when I noticed something quite important. 2 TDs have just knocked out the scout tanks, and I mentioned that onto the map. I'm like, yo guys, there are tanks that completely can flank us. And think about it, the Electo and the Su-85B both have effective guns, which would mulch these guys if we weren't and the M5A1, who was duking it out with them, kind of realised that, well, he's not so faithful to his team, but to be honest, unfortunately, we're not exactly showing the best of what we can do. So I'm kind of very cautious at this point, because obviously, if I make a mistake, I could potentially lose a good portion of my health. So I'm being ever so cautious, trying to make sure that the enemy tank's there. But then I realise, oh hello, Mr. Su-85B. I try and take a couple of shots in. Unfortunately, it's a little bit too late before I can just help save the other people. Bang! I get another shot in. Oh, can I reload in time? Bang! He's gone. So that's another tank knocked out. There's a 25 pounder. Bang! There's 4 kills for me. So, sugar, that was close. So now it's an Electo versus another couple of tanks. Unfortunately, my radio wasn't as good at this point, so I don't really know what's going on up there. However, considering the fact that there's only one tank left, I send a message saying, how are you two doing, Electo? Because I couldn't see him on the map. As you can see, I knew he was there, but I just couldn't, I unfortunately couldn't see them. The B1 character, I don't know why, went over there, but, so I head off back to base. Now I realise at this point that my shell carriage is, at this point my, well, I meant to say I can't see him on my map. Oh, but I thought at the time, oh, never mind, as the Electo unfortunately dies by the hands of the T-80. So I'm trying to make my way sneakily back to base, because although I have 10 rounds of HE ammunition, this is kind of crap. You know, it's nothing really. I mean, I had it because I thought, well, you know, I'm not likely to use it, and most matches never end up to be like this. So I'm sneaking back to the base, trying to make sure that I don't get spotted along the way, and our B1 friend is now following me suit. So what I was anticipating for the enemy team to do was for the enemy team to just start capping. So I might speed it up a little bit, just so that way. So there you go, the enemy team are starting to cap now. I unfortunately made the mistake of hitting the base. And there's their T-80. So let's have a look, see, and bang, he's gone. So a vulture kill if there ever was one, but you know, 5 kills now. And then obviously now I'm starting to take fire, because the enemy team are pretty much doing what I would do in this situation, which was, you know, making sure that making sure that I wasn't too exposed. B1 is still on its way. Sorry about that. I think it took me to the desktop. So, sorry. So, we're throwing him off a bit there. So, unfortunately, the B1 is taking some effective fire, and we have no idea at this point where the enemy team is. So, I'm trying to take cover, trying to hide myself as much as possible, because the M3 Lee does have an effective gun. It would only take about 3 or 4 shots to knock me out, and as there's 3 vehicles, it wouldn't take much to knock me out, especially if I wanted to try and live as long. So admittedly I was kind of nervous, because I didn't want to expose too much of myself, and some would call this tactic to be a bit too cowardly, but the M3 Lee finally shows himself, and I realise there's not big enough gap. So I'm trying to reverse as fast as I can, turning around. The B1 is proving to be the most amazing distraction, because now the Lee, I'm trying to spot him, and I'm like, come on, Mr. Lee, spot yourself, come on, where are you, Mr. Lee? So there's the M3 Lee, and I try and move myself into position. Unfortunately, I find that he's not right in that enough position, but the B1 does start to become effective. I try and throw a shot into the M3 Lee, I get his attention, bang, I take a shot by the M3 Lee, bang, a lucky shot into his cupola. Unfortunately, the Matilda sadly gets killed in the Sadly, the B1 gets killed in the process. Obviously, because for some reason I'm a camper, and I'm like, but dude, you know, you were doing it to me. He's like, well, you were doing the same to us, you know. They were taking pot shots, so you know,
some would call this tactic a bit campy. Some people would say it's all like angry, but it's just like, come on, dude. You know, you'd do the exact same thing. This is the internet, for example. You know. So anyway, we're onto this thing now, and I finally spot the Matilda, and then this is a desperate fight comes into play. So I'm like, oh shit! Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on! Oh, thank God! Oh, thank God! I was really nervous at that point because, I was just one more shot can kill me off. So now I finally have taken out all of the enemy tanks. Well, now I've taken out most of the enemy tanks, and I know now that they probably know. I'm like, yo guys, I'm not likely to win this though, because I had a firm suspicion that all it would take is a full HP M3 Lee to come and attack me. So I deliberated for a few seconds to whether or not I should just stay there or not. But I instead decided to go, sod it, I'm gonna grow some balls and, you know, go for it. And me trying to be sneaky, tried to climb that ridge. The Chinese have amazing defense against tanks, it's crazy. So I decided to say, sod it, I'm gonna go for their base. I was totally anticipating bumping into a tank along the way. I was just like, you know, come on, where are you guys? Come on, where are you? If I'm lucky, I could pull a few shots off and perhaps damage you before I die. But either way, it was really, really close. I'll just speed things up a little. So as I'm approaching through the gate, I go through this really well-designed gate, and I'm going through all the wrecks and the corpses of my teammates and their fallen, and the enemy as well, and I'm just like, oh shit. You know, a constant fear is always around me, and I was just, it was really quite nerve-wracking. Amazingly fun, but nerve-wracking as hell. So I finally approached the bridge, and this is where I'm starting to think, right, okay, so far so good, no problems. The enemy tank may probably be camping in their cap zone. You know, so I'm like, right, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and find a place to sit down so it make it harder for him to shoot at me. And then I finally decide to start capping. And I'm moving around, I'm turning my tank, and then I stop trying to anticipate where he's going to be shooting from. So I'm looking around. This is me just trying to, trying to make sure that he's not trying to flank me. I try holding my turret and just scanning, and then I find out he's capping our base. So I was relieved, obviously, because now I know I don't have to fight him, but I am also nervous, and I'm like, fingers crossed he's not just going to try and come back, because although technically it would be kind of a close call, he would only need to do one shot in order to win the game. But luckily, that wasn't the case, because he decided to stay there for as long as possible. So at this point I was like, come on, come on, come on, come on. And then I'm just like, actually, it looks like we might win this. So I'm saying, look, well played to everyone. Absolutely fantastic game. And I'm actually going to continue on because we won that. And I just couldn't believe my luck. I was like, yes! Freaking yeah! I will say this. Yeah, that was a good game. Yeah, 7 kills. Thumbs up. Damn. Anyway, I'll see you back in the garage. So there you have it. There is the Sherman. Damn good tank. I mean, it's flawed like any tier 4, but, it does the job. And if you have the right set of tactics, it does it very well. So yeah, I'm quite happy that this breaks the stereotype. I, at first, when I heard about this thing, believed all the rumours about this thing not being effective, that this thing had this problem, that this thing had that problem, that, oh, you can't do this because it's terrible, and, the gun's crap, and it's, okay, the gun may not be so fine. 92 millimeters worth of penetration, but in comparison to other tier 4 tanks, it's kind of better. Just a tad. But yeah, it works. For the Americans, it works. So, I would just like to say thank you ever so much for watching this, and thank you to anyone from the Game Decider people who watch the Game Decider videos, who watch my stuff as well. I know that many of them probably won't hear this message, but who knows, I might get a thank you video up as well for them, so it makes them makes him feel appreciated, because it is great to see the amount of views that I've been getting at the moment. I didn't think for 1 second I'd be able to get as much views as this. I was thinking, yeah, I'm gonna be, yeah, I didn't think I'd get as many views. So thank you so much to anyone who's watching, and thank you to the guys who've put the comments in, to the people who have put the likes in as well, because it all works. The fun machine is working smoothly. It's feeling very happy, not a bit suicidal, and yeah, it's working very well. So it's don't have to worry about saving that thing's arse all the time, which is great. Also, I am going to be doing more stuff in the future. College-y work has been quite crazy as of late, so although content-wise my footage has been coming out not as much as it should be, or as much as I'd like it to be, my college work is starting to come to a close now, so I should be, fingers crossed, be able to release content on a bit more of a regular basis, which is absolutely fantastic. And I will be looking at in the future you will be seeing a Stuart review. Oh, sorry, Stuart review. That's the Stuart. Forget about that Stuart. No, the Sherman review, because I haven't got the entire... Oh, I have now. Now I've got the entire collection of the vehicles. Now I've got all the stuff, but obviously I haven't had a good chance to try out every bit of the features, so I'm going through this at a slower pace, admittedly, but I'm still going through it. So it's all good. It's all good for the common good, and when we get to this vehicle, we'll definitely have some decent times reviewing this thing. Quite happy with that. But yeah, so thank you very much on that, and I'll also review other bits of vehicles. I also have other bits of content as well, so if you guys are interested in all stuff other than just World of Tanks, feel free to check it out. I have got a Rome Total War season going on. I will give you a spoiler, just about to finish. Fingers crossed I'll have uploaded it, or I will be uploading it by this point. I have just about finished the Far Cry series, and I'll be going on to something totally new in the future, so feel free to check it out on that stuff. With all that said, thank you very much for watching again. Hope you enjoyed this video. Any kind of constructive criticisms or feedback is also appreciated. I've been doing this for a while now, but there are still things I don't know. So, stuff like that. Like if in commentary videos, if I ramble on too much, like now perhaps, I realise I'm talking a bit too much, but I really would like to know, because, I want to entertain you guys enough, and I don't want to kind of just do this one thing again and again, and then eventually you guys get bored. So, let me know, alright? Anyway, so thank you very much. This is Crap Hunter signing out. Have a good one, guys.